Watch out, Big 12. Devin Dampier could mess up your defense this fall.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. It's your first time tuning into the show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with everyone in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media. We can follow our show on X at Locked On Utes, or my personal handle at JT Wistrcill. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On College, all caps, no spaces, at monarchmoney.com. for 50% off your first year. My name is JT Wistrcill, and on today's show, we're going to be diving into the Utah depth chart, talking about, hey, who do we think is going to be where? Because Kyle Whittingham's not going to provide us one, so I'm going to give you my take on who I think is going to be emerging at each spot. Then talk about, hey, who are going to be the guys who step up on special teams? Kyle Whittingham offered some insight into one of the most underrated aspects of the game is your kicking game, which Utah, I think, should be fairly strong at this year. But first, want to start with what I thought was a very encouraging couple of updates from Devin Dampier on his progress with Utah football. We're less than 2 weeks away from seeing Devin Dampier on the field for the very first time with this Utah football team, which I think is just absolutely incredible. And he gave an interview earlier this week, and I thought a number of the takeaways were really exciting. I think the first one is he talked about one of the things he's improved on the most is just when to take chances and when not to. If you are going to be a quarterback who plays under Kyle Whittingham, doesn't matter, it's Jason Beck's offense, but like if you're going to be a quarterback who plays under Kyle Whittingham, you better not turn the ball over. We've seen this happen time and time again. The most recent example I can think of is Nate Johnson. Nate Johnson, when he was at quarterback for Utah after he passed Bryson Barnes because he led Utah in that comeback against Baylor, he led them to the win. Then a couple of games later, the Oregon State one, like the UCLA one, Utah stopped letting Nate run the ball, his most effective trait, really. And it felt like they weren't doing quarterback runs because Nate was fumbling it a little bit. So just, took those Nate wasn't trying to take chances that would lead to turnovers, but he just didn't have the ball security at the time. And it led to some turnovers. So that made Utah go, okay. And they were nervous about him throwing the ball. So Utah would play incredibly conservatively, and they would find ways to win these games by just basically absolute, just low scoring fist fight, basically, where it'd be like Utah out toughs you 14-7, 14-10 was like that UCLA one. That's just what Kyle Whittingham, he knew his teams could win that way. So he was more than comfortable to play that way because he felt like it gave them the best chance to win. So if you're going to play for Kyle Whittingham, you have to know when to take chances and when not to. And that is an area of Devin Dampier's game where he has to get better at. He threw 12 interceptions. I do think on a lot of those, it was his receivers making a mistake or he was under duress and something happened. So there's other like, hey, offensive line needs to execute better. Receivers run a better route, make a play on the ball at times too. So there's multiple people that are at fault for some of those INTs. I actually think his interceptions number is going to drop this year, but he has to just make better decisions as well, too, because anytime you throw an interception, that's going to be on you. There are also, of course, with every quarterback and every season, there's going to be picks that should be picked off. And the classic thing about defensive backs, right, is that they don't have good hands, so they're going to drop it. With Devin Dampier, that's something where he's got to take better care of the ball if this Utah football team wants to be successful in 2025, especially because he's going to be playing against better defenses overall. And that is something I feel like he will do a good job of. I think he's going to take a better care of the ball this year. I love that this has been a big thing that he's improving on, is knowing when to take chances and when not to. He had one interception, I think it was against Utah State, where he totally just forces it on 3rd and long. It's not really there, and he just tries to make a play. When you have the offensive line, the run game, and the defense that Utah does, you don't need to do that. You just need to take what's there, especially when you have your legs like you do if you're Devin Dampier. You don't need to force the big throw or the big play because with this offense, this team, you can live to fight another day. And I think that's something that Devin Dampier is starting to understand. And Big 12 defenses should be very scared because if Devin Dampier cuts down on those turnovers, that's the biggest gripe against him, right? 12-12 touchdown to interception ratio, not including his rushing touchdowns, in which he has over 30 last season. So if he can cut down on those interceptions, look out. Because you were talking about one of the most dynamic QBs in college football already. And then if he's not turning the ball over very much, that's why I say Big 12 defenses should be very scary if Devin Dampier can indeed cut down those turnovers. And I believe he did. I believe he will, right? And let's also not forget what Devin Dampier is going against. What should be one of the best defenses in the Big 12. I said before, I think Utah's defense might take a slight step back because of who they lost, but they're still easily a top 5 unit to me this coming season. And he did say that playing that defense in practice has made him better every single day. And when you're going against the likes of Lander Barton, you're trying to throw to receivers who are looking to get open against Smith Snowden. When you got safeties like Teo Johnson and Rabbit Evans doing things on the back end, a defensive coordinator like Morgan Scalley who's going to make life hard on you, that's where you are going to improve. And I think it's great that he gets to face an elite defense like the one Utah has, an elite defensive coordinator too. And also Devin Dampier is a guy who was asked like, hey, who are the wide receivers that have, really showed out so far? And he did a good job of pulling back and not naming any names when pressed on that. So also, taking up part of that leadership role and doing what Utah football obviously likes to keep things close to the vest. We know that. They're not releasing a depth chart. So I think that kind of shows us how much they like to keep these things close to the vest, right? So I think that him not signaling out his receivers overall is probably a good thing for Utah. The fact that he's not he wants to just lift the group up as a whole and not risk alienating anyone by leaving them out when trying to run through the list as a whole too. One thing I love that he brought up is that he calls his ability not to get sacked his spidey sense. And he does have a remarkable ability not to get sacked. I mean, he's been sacked under 10 times in his collegiate career, and he started well over 10 games. He was only sacked 5 times last year, which is just a remarkable number. And it does almost look like he has that sixth sense out there. That spidey sense, as he called it, with his ability to consistently get away from guys and feel the pressure and navigate the pocket, know when to scramble, know when to buy time and dodge tacklers before making a throw and a play downfield. That's just something Devin Dampier does incredibly well. And he does seem to have that extra sense of it out there because he just does it at a level that not many guys are able to do overall too. He also talked about just how much he loves playing behind this offensive line. He said sometimes he'll have 8 seconds to throw in the pocket, which is absolutely remarkable. I've seen some people say in the comments, on Twitter and just wherever, isn't that also a detriment to the defense? Yes, but I think the takeaway, right, is we know Utah's offensive line is going to be good this upcoming season. Even I, who have my questions about how good, say I think they're a top 10 unit in college football this coming year, maybe even a top 5 unit. So they're really good. So Utah's defensive line would always have their work cut out for them. Unfortunately, I think it's a above average, really good, maybe even a great offensive line that Utah has to among P4 defensive lines, maybe average. Just we'll have to see, right? Can Logan Fano be the guy that we've been wanting and hoping that he could be for the last couple seasons? Are we going to see the likes of John Henry Daly really emerge, right? Who are going to be the other defensive ends that pop up and just show out for this Utah team, because they desperately need guys too on the edge, but they're also going against 2 of the edge best pass protectors in football, of course, Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. So I go back and forth. I think it's a compliment to the offense more than anything, but it's a little concerning for the defense, but just hard because of who they're going against once again. But Big 12 defenses have to go against Devin Dampier. And those dual threat abilities, once again, he was tied, according to Pro Football Focus, for the most forced missed tackles amongst quarterbacks last year. Also averaged 7.5 yards per carry. We're talking about that. And he's not going to turn the ball over as much while improving in year 3 as a quarterback in his second year as a full-time starter. Sky's the limit for Devin Dampier, and thus sky is the limit for this Utah offense. We know what the quarterback position is going to look like for Utah. What is the rest of this roster and this team going to look like? That's what we're going to dive into in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, get smart, categorized on your spending as well, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Monarch Money just makes it simple to review your finances and go over them with your partner as well too. So you can both set budgets, see if you're meeting your goals, and just track your spending activity all in one place. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. All caps, no spaces, LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps. You can head over to Monarch Money today. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Open Phone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communication. Do you juggle 2 phones just trying to keep your business and personal together? Well, Open Phones can solve that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this. And the AI agent headlines, after hours calls, answer common questions, and capture leads, so I never miss a customer again. You can see why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers when you use Open Phone today. Kyle Whittingham has decided Utah football will more than likely not release a depth chart, so I decided to do one myself. So what we're going to do is go position by position and list out who I think will be the major contributors. I want to say that as well too. I'm not going to go into much of who I think the third string guys are. I want to really focus on who the guys I think are going to make an impact and play. Obviously, some we can go into a little bit of the depth chart, right? Like we know Devin Dampier is going to be the starter, but I do think quarterback's a pretty easy one to figure out. We were told that Isaac Wilson is the backup quarterback, so I do believe he will see the second most amount of snaps under center, barring them doing what I've kind of been beating the table for all offseason, them to use Nate Johnson if something does happen under center. But Nate Johnson's an athlete, so we'll see what different roles and things that Utah tries to incorporate their very speedy former quarterback who still has a lot of upside as a playmaker. Outside of Nate Johnson, right? Who else are we talking about then at QB? It'll be Bird Ficklin will be the true number 3 guy according to Kyle Whittingham. What does that mean for Zerbrug and everyone else? Not really sure, but the top 3 guys that Utah is going to use, at least unless Nate Johnson factors into this, Dampier, Wilson, and Ficklin. I like that group overall. I do feel like Wilson can be an adequate backup for Utah, as I touched on a show earlier in the week. At the running back spot, it's pretty clear 1-2 punch right now. It's Wayshawn Parker, the Washington State transfer, Naquari Rogers, the New Mexico transfer. Rogers, over 300 yards last year, but Wayshawn was the one as a true freshman over 700 yards. I thought Wayshawn would be the one who'd really separate himself. So far, what we've heard is that it's been him and Naquari 1 and 2. I still think Wayshawn will eventually get the lion's share of the carries, but those are the top 2 guys right now, and he said it is close to 50-50 on him. Outside of that, Daniel Bray has been mentioned as one of the guys who's standing out so far. I'm still curious to see if we see any of like Devin Green, the transfer from UNLV. I think could be a guy who factors into this, but barring injury right now, I think almost all of the carries in a competitive game go to Parker and then Rogers. As for the wide receiver spots for Utah right now, Tobias Merriweather and Larry Simmons have been the 2 guys' names that have been mentioned the most. They've gotten the chance to speak to media. Mayweather, the former Cal receiver, most recently, 6'5", 200 pounds, just got to stay healthy and put it all together. Seems like he's hit the ground running. Larry Simmons, the Southern Miss transfer, over 400 yards last year with the Golden Eagles, another guy who's been having a strong camp based on everything we've been hearing. So those are 2 guys that I feel like will be the top 2 receivers on this team. I think Ryan Davis is going to be the slot guy for Utah, over 700 yards in Jason Beck's offense last year at New Mexico, and has that chemistry with Devin Dampier. So those are the top 3 receivers to me. Outside of that, who else is going to end up playing a role on this team as a pass catcher? Well, sticking with receivers first, I do still think Creed Whitmore catches a couple passes this year, even if I think Davis is the top slot guy. And Darren Zipper, Smith Snowden said it at the Big 12 Media Days to me in our conversation that he thought that Zipper was going to turn a lot of heads this year. So I still think Zipper will be a productive guy. So those are the 6 receivers I really expect to be active. Oh, excuse me, actually that was 5. The 5 main receivers I expect to be active, and we'll see what is Luca Calderella's role with this team, because I do think he'll get snaps. I just don't know how frequently they will throw him the ball, but he's been a very good wide receiver blocker, and I'd love to see him involved more in the offense, so we shall see. At the tight end spot, I still think Otto Tia is going to get an opportunity here. Utah said they shifted him to a tight end, right? The former Utah State wide receiver, big body, over 500 yards with the Aggies. I still got to believe he's there, but is he the top guy? I mean, J.J. Buchanan is the one a lot of people have been talking about. Hunter Andrews looked solid in spring ball, right? Dallin Bentley has the most tight end experience of anyone in that room. Oh, also, Lander Barton is practiced at tight end. Should have mentioned Smith Snowden a little bit at receiver too. What exactly is Utah's roles with these guys going to be? I still think Tia on like third and longs is going to get the most run at tight end, but maybe everything else they look for an Andrews to be very productive there and maybe a Bentley for the blocking capabilities. But how important is that aspect in a Jason Beck offense? That's still also something we're trying to determine and figure out. So that's how I see the offensive depth chart really. Oh, and I forgot the offensive line, but like they have 5 starters back. If there was an injury anywhere, right? Alex Harrison's a guy who's played a little bit for them on the interior. I look at a Ike Garcia at tackle. I'd love to see him get out there. They brought in the USC transfer as well. That could be another option if one of the tackles ends up getting hurt. But your starting offensive line from left to right is Caleb Lomu, Tanoa Tongai, Jaron Kump, Michael Mokafisi, and then right tackle Spencer Fano. It's one of the best in the country. Utah's not going to shake that group up. But the defensive line is much shaken up from last year. There's a lot of new names there. You got Vimahi and Vakalahi as your 2 defensive tackles. Vimahi's been here forever with Utah, just a veteran who's going to do a good job stopping the run. You get Vakalahi is he's more your traditional like 3 tech, like got a little bit of twitch, can rush the passer a little bit, but also more than capable of eating up those double teams still on the inside. Loved what he showed as a freshman. I think those are the 2 top guys. Then I think it'll be Jonah Leia at the defensive tackle spot as someone who we've heard Utah coaches talk about and say that he's had a strong spring. I think he plays a role with this team, but Kyle's also talked about now and said, hey, like we are getting more production out of these young defensive tackles. So, Pua, excuse me, I think it is one of the defensive, or Pupa is one of the defensive tackles that they've raved about a lot. They think he's going to be a guy that can contribute for this team. But Carson Kafusi is a guy I'm incredibly high on. We've heard Alex Markham come on this show before and talk about him being a breakout candidate back in even the spring, just based on what he's putting together there. So he is a guy that I do think could end up having a very robust season for this Utah team as the year goes on, because sometimes we see it does take time for those freshmen to break out in total. At the defensive ends, one of them is Logan Fanos. He was a starter last year. He's got one of those spots on lock. So who ends up having the other one? Just based on the buzz that was going a while ago, I still think it'll be John Henry Daly based on all the hype around him. But I have a hard time believing a Paul Fitzgerald who had 8 sacks with the Aggies. He's not going to step up in there. Lance Holtzclaw coming over from Washington. See a guy that emerges. I still liked what I saw from Jackson Jones, the Oregon transfer in the spring game. So can he pop up? And Cash Dillon was a true freshman last year who Utah talked about wanting to get him on the field, but it was just hard to do that with the veterans they had. So maybe he pops in there too. But as of right now, I do think it's Fano, John Henry Daly, and then like Holtzclaw, Fitzgerald, and everyone else from there. But defensive line and pass rush is I'm curious to see how the depth charts there shake out. Utah's been confident, said they're confident in what they got there, and hopefully those guys can have huge seasons for this Utah team, because this is a Utah team with obviously a very strong position at defensive line. They're also growing a very strong position at linebacker. Their top 3 linebackers are absolutely remarkable. I mean, Lander Barton is one of the best linebackers in the Big 12, just an absolute thumper, who was a little banged up last year, going to be healthier this year and get back to his old self. Le'Veone Demooney missed all of last season. That was a key loss for Utah, because when Karene Reed was hurt, you had to ask some other guys to step up and do some different things. Jonathan Hall, who I expect to be even better this year, probably shouldn't have had to play at linebacker as much as he did last year because he's learning a new position, but he's a heat-seeking missile. He showed a lot of promise, I thought, at safety, improved as the year went on. So you get a veteran in Demooney, what's become a veteran in Lander, but also just a really dang good player. And all these guys are, but Lander is, like, to me, going to be a top 200 pick in the NFL draft this upcoming year at minimum. And then we also mentioned Jonathan Hall being as stout as he is. Trey Reynolds, that's an awesome 4th linebacker right there. If anyone gets hurt, you can have him step in and fill in. And you got some freshmen, Cyrus Polu, Christian Thatcher, that could also play a role in the linebacker spot as well, which is massive to me. Then you look on the outside at cornerback. I love Utah's top 3 guys. I mean, Smith Snowden is going to be one of the best corners in the Big 12. I think he's best utilized in the slot, so I'm glad that Utah is going to keep him there. Then you look at Elijah Scooby Davis. He was really good on the outside. Another year back for him, starting with Sharif Shaw, Morgan Scalley. I expect him to have a huge season as well. And Blake Cotton was named the other outside corner that he'd started to separate, although we have heard they're going to rotate a few other guys in there, but those are going to be your main 3 corners. And then does like a Jeremiah Caldwell, does he get in the race there? To who are the other guys that end up stepping up? That remains to be seen. But the main 3 corners are going to be Cotton, Scooby, and Smith Snowden. Once that's just has all the makings to me of a classic Utah secondary. If you're unfamiliar with Blake Cotton, he was the transfer that Utah got from UC Davis. Was a longtime starter. Was a longtime starter with that Big Sky group, with the Big Sky team down there. And I do think he's going to continue to produce now at the P4 level. Speaking of producing, Teo Johnson going to continue to be one of the best safeties in the Big 12. Got to improve as a tackler, but was really good in coverage last season. I think he'll have improved on a few of those things, and he's going to have a huge year that culminates in him getting drafted. Rabbit Evans might be like the breakout candidate I'm watching the most this upcoming season. I think he's absolutely going to terrify defenses, and don't sleep on Nate Ritchie either. I think he's going to be a guy who can produce, and Jackson Benny has turned some heads in fall camp too. So lots of guys that are capable of stepping up at the safety spot too, and Ritchie's a guy who's been here forever. There's just a really good number of guys up and down this Utah roster. Let me know how you guys think if Utah did have a depth chart, how it would shake out, who would step up, who do you want to see more of, would you not rather be on there? That's something I'm really excited to see with this Utah football team, is what it actually looks like the first game. Kyle has switched things around on us before, but I'm hoping this year it's not as crazy of these switcheroos. And you know what? Either way, we're just getting closer to getting these answers, which I am incredibly excited about. We do have answers for who are going to be the two kickers, a kicker and punter for Utah this season. What to make of Utah's specialists, we'll tell you in a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy sports platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got your eye on a big name quarterback or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the game. You know, we're just about done with preseason football, so the season's right around the corner, right? Do you think Joe Burrow is going to have another historic run with the Bengals? Is Saquon Barkley going to crush it on the ground for Philly? You can head over to Prize Picks and start playing today. It's really simple. I mean, you just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. So you think Joe Burrow's got a nice matchup. He's going to go over his passing yards. How about Tua Tagovailoa? Is he going to go under because he might be playing a tougher defense? It's easy as that. You just go over, pick 2 to 6 player stat projections. Say if you go under or over, and if you get your picks right, you could win. You could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. The flex play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, just all caps, no spaces, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, you can run your game today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. August 26th is officially FanDuel Feature Days, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for the bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on the NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Who do you guys think is going to win the Super Bowl this year? I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. I think they got a really good shot this year. It's one of the best rosters in the NFL. And I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be capable of doing some big things. But whoever you're feeling, make sure you head over to FanDuel today, or you can even parlay your division winners and dark horses. You can visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets with the NFL season right around the corner, because Future Days is only one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game today. Special teams is always a very important part of a football team, but one of the least discussed quantities. Game-winning kicks, all of that. So crucial, just not covered as much in fall camp until we get to that point where we actually need it. It's just something that gets overlooked of like, oh yeah, we're so focused on the quarterback, we forgot we need this kicker to make the last second field goal. And for Utah, that kicker this season is going to be true freshman Dylan Curtis. The 6'2 kicker from Murray High School is a true freshman. He enrolled early, and Kyle Whittingham is a massive fan of what he brings in. He says overall the special teams has been up and down, but he also said Dylan Curtis has the strongest leg that they've ever had at Utah, which he said Matt Gay might take offense to that, but look, Curtis was, absolutely incredible at Murray High School. He was rated a 6-star kicker and a 5-star punter by Chris Saylor, kicking out of Murray, Utah. He was invited to the 2025 Navy All-American Bowl, two-time All-Region, All-State. He was a team MVP, right? He holds the state record for the longest field goal made at 63 yards in a game and the most field goals made in a season at 21. Let's not forget, he made a 65-yard field goal in fall camp earlier this year as well, too. He was 39 for 39 on PATs and 21 or 27 on field goals as a senior, knocking that career-long 63-yarder, as we mentioned, as well, too. He also averaged 59 yards per kickoff. He was money, and that accuracy has obviously caught the eye of Kyle Whittingham, and it seems like it's going to allow him to see the field early on for Utah, which I think is huge, that you have a kicker with this much upside who's already starting as a true freshman. I think the results could be massive for this Utah football program if you have a kicker who, rather than trying the Hail Mary, which is so hard to get through, you have a kicker with the leg. it's always different in the game. And Kyle did talk about that. Like, he is a freshman. So let's see how he goes out there and performs and the lights are bright and all of that. But the fact that he's already won this job and has been impressing as much as he has in fall camp, I think is a massive sign for this team. So love what Dylan Curtis, the freshman, has been able to do. I think Utah's kicking game could potentially be the best it's been in the last couple seasons, which would be massive. So props to Dylan Curtis for having a great fall camp so far. Utah's new punter is Orion Phillips, the transfer from Missouri. He spent the 24 season at Missouri and the 23 season at Murray State. Didn't see action this last season, but in 11 career games at Murray State, punted 54 times for 2,328 yards, which is an average of 43 yards per punt, with 17 boots down inside the opponent 20-yard line against 3 touchbacks. Also punted a career best 10 times for 437 yards against Louisville in 2023. He's a guy that has been a veteran. He's been around the sport for a little bit, right? I mean, he's listed as a sophomore, but as we mentioned, like, he's going into year 3 now of college football too. This is the guy who comes over to Utah from Australia. He's committed to the craft. He attended a school that was established by Australian at the famed Australian Kicking Academy, Pro Kicks Australia too. So he's trained with some of the best, and being able to flip the field position is massive. If Utah watched the film and identified this guy as their next punter, I have no reason to doubt him. So Phillips, I think, will play a huge role for helping this Utah defense remain elite by, hey, if Utah's defense gives up a first down or two, offense of the other team still going to be out of field goal range because of the job done by Phillips to flip that field position. So I like the way the Utah special teams are shaping up. And I just think this Utah team, they need to figure out a couple of the return spots still, but we expect Smith Snowden to be one of those guys. He talked about that at Big 12 Media Days again. So Utah, if they could get those extra couple of swing plays in the special teams game, that would be absolutely massive this season. And it feels like this Utah team is getting their iron sharpened at the right time, and they're ready to go for what could be a special run that culminates in not just a Big 12 title, but a CFP berth. How do you guys think Utah is going to do this season? What do you think of the depth chart, the kickers, and what do you think of Devin Dampier? Let me know in the comments below. That's going to do it for our show. If you're in the market for a second listen, make sure you check out Spencer McLaughlin at Locked On College Football. Keeps you covered on all of the biggest stories going around in the world of CFB. That's going to do it for our show. On tomorrow's show, going to continue to talk about the upcoming season, talk about the biggest takeaways for more media availability, as well as do some season previews and prediction stuff, because we're less than a week away, or barely less than a week away from the first game. We have our first slate of college football, though, this upcoming weekend. I can't wait. Hope you all have a great time in watching it. Make sure you join us again on Locked On Utes tomorrow as we continue to keep you covered on your favorite team each and every day.